Today we're doing a standalone message, which is pastor code for I can say whatever I want and I don't have to clean this up next week. All right, and we're talking about a topic that's actually one of my favorite to preach about. The title of the message is The Way of Jesus. Jesus had this way about him that people loved. People loved being with Jesus. And the reason why this message matters is because it's possible, I should say, to be right about Jesus, but to miss the way of Jesus. And so what we'll do today is we'll talk about some of the characteristics of Jesus. But before we go there, you need to know this about me. In a previous life, I was a youth pastor for 10 years. I broke all sorts of youth ministry records, being in youth ministry for that long. But one of the things I would show my students over and over again was this video that you're about to watch that shows the complete opposite way of Jesus, okay? Check this out.
Wow, now it's time for me to tell you all what you've done wrong since I saw you. And don't try and hide because I'm Jesus. I will find you. Let's start with you, Peter. You lied to your mother the other day. Andrew, you said a naughty word when you hit your finger with the hammer. James, you laughed at him when he hit his finger. Moving right along, John, you drank too much wine the other night. Not way too much, just enough to make you angry. Matthew, you fell asleep in church, didn't you? Yes, we did. And Thomas, you were slow dancing a little too close with that girlfriend of yours. Let's see, and you, I forgot your name, so you're off the hook for now. Philip, I saw you smoking a cigarette behind that big rock the other day. Thaddeus, I hate to say I saw you stick up the middle finger, so I'll cut you off with a round camel. Benjamin, I my WWJD bracelet. Jacob, I don't mind you saying my name, but not after you stub your toe. Frank, you know what you did. I just can't repeat it because I'm Jesus. All you sinners, come with me. Time to pay the piper. I heard that.
Just for the record, that's not a Creekside training video. We laugh at that because we know there's something very wrong about that way of Jesus. And so what we'll do today is we'll look at some of the characteristics of the way of Jesus. And the first one is that Jesus drew in the unlikely. Jesus had this way of drawing in people that no one would have expected, like the outsiders, the worst sinners of the day, the skeptics. So meaning Jesus was able to draw in people that were nothing like him. People that were nothing like Jesus, listen to this, liked Jesus. And that should cause us to pause for a moment. Because unfortunately today, a lot of Christians sometimes aren't known for this. But with Jesus, it's different. People listened. People stayed. They leaned in and they followed him. Why? Well, it certainly wasn't because he was hypercritical and judgmental of other people. And it wasn't because he watered down the truth. No, he cared about the truth. But he had a way of talking about it and still showing that he cared about the relationship. People could feel the difference. And if we're being honest, that's a lot harder than just being right. The other thing that we see with Jesus is that Jesus created unlikely communities. He could take people who really didn't have a lot of common, in fact, who were kind of like against each other, and he could create a community together, meaning people who are on the opposite ends of the political and ideological spectrum did life together. Not just coexist, not just tolerate one another, not just sit at the same table and pretend to be friends, but really not even making eye contact with each other, but they could depend on one another. You got Matthew, the tax collector, okay? Despised by his community, hated because he's working for Rome. He's taking a paycheck from Rome. And so his whole community would have hated him because tax collectors were often known for taking a little bit off the top and putting it in their pocket. Okay, so you got Matthew on one side, and on the other side, you got Simon the Zealot, who's part of this like Jewish resistance movement against Rome. Now, we don't know for sure if Simon had a dagger with him, but some of the people that Simon would hang out with would have daggers with them, and they would pull them out and take them and take out anyone who collaborated with Rome. So you got people that are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum. In all case and purposes, these are enemies. And yet with Jesus, they're able to see past their political differences, and they're able to see past their backgrounds. They can do life together. So Jesus has this way about him that is so unique. And it's so different. And here's the third one. And this is the one we'll spend the majority of our time in today. Jesus stretched people personally. People were changed when they were with Jesus. He changed the way they saw people. He changed the way they live. He changed the way they were able to kind of think emotionally, spiritually, and morally. Meaning this, people's comfort zones were challenged by Jesus. Challenged. It's possible that you're here today and you think you might be following Jesus, but if your comfort zone is never challenged, you might not be following him as closely as you think. What version of Jesus comes to your mind? Do you think of the soft, tender, compassionate Jesus? You've seen this Jesus. He's in Hobby Lobby. And there's a picture of him. He's with a lamb. The lamb is actually floating. He's not even touching him, but floating in his arms. There's that version of Jesus. Or do you think of the table flipping, demon casting Jesus? Jesus had range. And his range wasn't mood swings. We all know someone like that. Don't look at him, all right? This isn't like for Jesus, this is like he had mastery, okay? Jesus could be like soft, tender, and compassionate. It's like we got the Notebook Jesus on one side and we got the Braveheart Jesus on the other side, okay? He could be tough, literally as nails, all right? So if you put this like on the scale, Jesus was able to go like from like a 1 to a 10, okay? He could do whatever is needed. For a lot of us, this is about preference, but for Jesus, this is about capacity. So Jesus could hang on the 1, 2s, or 3s, okay? He was super compassionate and gracious with people. Like Jesus, like unlike in most rabbis in his day, he would welcome being in the presence of women and children. Most rabbis, they wouldn't lower themselves like that. But Jesus brought dignity to women and children. Most rabbis would not be caught dead with people that were sinners or lepers. They would certainly not touch them. But Jesus knows the pain that they're walking with on a daily basis. So what does he do? He takes potential like scrutiny and shame on himself, and he touches them. Jesus looked over the city of Jerusalem, and he wept for the city. He wept because he saw them as people without a shepherd. And there's some of us here, and like the thought of this is like, oh, it's gonna be one of those sermons? Oh, you're gonna talk about that? This is like awkward. You grew up in a family where if a guy showed emotion, like their man card would get pulled, all right? You're like, this is gonna be awkward. Just relax, okay? This isn't the Titanic. I'm not asking how you felt when Jack sank, all right? Jesus, he had this range, so he could also be a 10. He could be a 10 like you wouldn't even believe it. Like Jesus, he's able to be tough, extremely tough. Like he could take on the religious establishment of the day. Most people would have been terrified to take on the religious establishment. They had all the power, all the influence. Jesus wasn't scared of them at all. He could take them on privately or publicly, not terrified even in the slightest with them. This is the same guy who could walk up to demon-possessed men. We read these passages in the Bible, we don't even picture what that would be like. Guys whose eyes don't even look human, foaming at the mouth, who would bring terror to an entire community. He'd walk right up to them, toe-to-toe, cast the demon right out of them. Jesus takes on the flogging by the Romans, takes on the cross, doesn't beg for mercy, doesn't recant. You see, Jesus had this like divine elasticity. He could be a 1 when needed or a 10. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about this. I want this to be highly practical today. I want you to think about, what is your home base? What's the number that best reflects you? So for me, my home base is probably in this 4, 5, or 6 range. And if someone pushed me and it's like, yeah, but I need a number, I'd say, okay, I'm probably like a 5. Now, before you guys start judging me, this guy is so soft. All right, just want you to know, I had a soccer scholarship. Okay, I could throw down on the field and I got a red card one time. All right, but that's for a different sermon, okay? But for me, if I'm honest with you, like, it's a little bit harder for me to go to the 7, 8s, and 9s. I can go there, but it's a little bit harder, okay? So like 5 is probably like my home base. I want you to think about what your home base is. I want you to lock it in. Now, I want you to share it with someone next to you. What do you think is your home base, okay? Go. Okay. All right. Share it with someone. Good. Okay. Anybody here like a 10? That's your home base? Nobody's a 10. Okay, yeah, it's not often someone would raise their hand for this. But if you're a 10, this means you're like the Rambo or Sarah Connor of Creekside, okay? And any guys here would say there may be a 1. Again, not super common, right? Not common for guys to say that. That's my home base. If you were one, I'm not saying this is who you are, but it's possible you might represent Mr. Rogers a little bit, okay? You don't fight, you process, all right? And so here's the thing. We all probably have a number that's our home base, but now I want you to think about what your range is. The range that you have, okay? So for me, if I'm being totally transparent, I'm probably a 5. I can probably get down to the 2 fairly comfortably, but anything like past 7, I can do it, but it's a stretch. I've had moments where I've gone up, but it's not easy for me, okay? So I'm talking about my range now. Okay, I can go down to a 2, but it's really hard for me to get past a 7. If I had more time with you, I would tell you, because it has a lot to do with my family. I'll just share the brief version of it. My parents were great. They both unfortunately passed away from cancer the last couple of years, but if you met my parents, you would say, Matt, your parents were all-stars, and they were. They were awesome. But as great as they were, they didn't have the basic skills to work out conflict. That's not to say it was super violent in my house, but there was always tension between them. Always. I felt it all the time. But in public, everyone thought they were like fine, and they were great in public. But at home, oftentimes there was this like tension, and they didn't know how to work it out. So as a kid growing up, I absorbed it. And so now when I have moments of conflict, I always feel this extra like tension in the moment. It'd be naive of me to say, oh, it hasn't impacted me at all. No, I'm aware of how it's impacted me. Okay, I want you to think about your range, okay? So my range is more on the soft side of the scale, because I can go down to a 2, but I can get to like maybe a 7. It's harder for me to go past that, okay? I want you to think about your range. If your range is more on the softer end of the scale, raise your hand. Okay. If your range is more on the harder side of the scale, raise your hands. If you don't have a range at all, raise your hand. Okay, some of you, you're like, I'm not participating, okay? I don't like this. Okay, if your range is more on the softer side of the scale, all right, I'm not saying this is true of you all the time, but this is how you could be perceived some of the time, okay? Not all the time, but some of the time. People might think you're too soft, all right? People might think like you need to toughen up a little bit. All right, sometimes people might think you're like a marshmallow maybe, okay? Now, if you're on the harder end of the scale, this is how sometimes you're perceived. Sometimes people think you can be a jerk. Sometimes people might think you're kind of harsh. Maybe even like sandpaper with an opinion, okay? Here's how Jesus would speak to either side, okay? He would say this: you both need a therapist and you both need a small group, okay? Because Jesus wouldn't say, hey, you're fine. You're fine being that way. No big deal. No. Jesus would say, follow me. He wouldn't say, oh, it's totally fine. You're totally okay being like that the rest of your life. No, he would challenge you. He would stretch you. He would get you out of your comfort zone. So let's kind of say like maybe your home base is a 3, but your range is more on the soft side of the scale. So if that describes you, you're probably really good with emotions. Emotions probably don't freak you out. You're probably good at like handling other people's emotions. You might be a good shock absorber. If someone comes with a lot of emotion, you don't demonize them. You don't go, what's wrong with you? Get it together. Like you might actually cry. You might have cried at a Pixar movie. All right. You can like string a couple sentences together on why you love someone. You're not that dude who says, I told you I loved you the day I married you. That's enough. You can actually like tell people, this is what I love about you. And you can like freely do that. It's not like a stretch for you. You're probably good at connecting with people. But what might be hard for you, what might be a challenge, is to do confrontation. Maybe it's hard to stand up for yourself. Maybe it's hard to put a boundary in place. Maybe there's a part of you that's made anger all bad. And so what happens to you if you're not careful is you'll stuff anger. And you'll pretend everything's fine. I'm fine. It's okay. But it's not fine. You're just being quiet. And anger that is stuffed, that is like pushed underground, it doesn't like just disappear. It often leaks. It leaks into passive aggressiveness. It leaks into sarcasm. It leaks into cold shoulders. And so here's the thing that's important. The truth is, anger is not bad. It's a God-given emotion. And the 8, 9s, and 10s are like, yes, preach it. Here's the issue. The issue is, what do you do with your anger? What's it attached to? What does it produce in you? The problem isn't anger. The problem oftentimes is unexamined anger. And here's a perfect case of this. Jesus got angry. Like Jesus had moments where he was really angry. In fact, probably the best example of this is John chapter 2. Jesus gets to the temple, he's getting to church, and he doesn't like what he sees. Okay, John chapter 2, it says this: in the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money, okay? This is basically saying he's getting to the temple and he's seeing people being taken advantage of as they try to worship God. Those who aren't as like financially stable are being exploited here, and Jesus isn't having it. So he made a whip out of the cords. The 8, 9, and 10s like, this is why I love Jesus. And he drove all the people from the courts. Okay, this is the John Wick moment of the Gospels. All right, now I got to say something really quickly. This isn't Jesus losing it. This isn't Jesus like snapping. This isn't Jesus having like a bad day. This isn't like the disciples going, he's been kind of cranky the last few weeks. So I think I get why that happened. No, it's none of that. This is what's fascinating. Think about this. Maybe you've never thought about this. Have you thought about how long it takes to make a whip? This wasn't like Jesus like going off the handle here. This wasn't like Jesus microwaving a whip. Boop, boop, 2 minutes, whip's done. No, this took hours. It takes a lot of time to braid the cords of a whip together and make it tight. So Jesus, he's got a plan here. He responds with clarity, control, and purpose. So here's the thing. There's a big difference, though, between acting from anger and reacting with anger. Some of the 8, 9s, and 10s, this is important for you. There's a big difference between these two. So Jesus, when he gets angry here, this is towards injustice. This is not about his ego. This is not about being right. For a lot of us, that's what it can come down to. It's personal. For Jesus, this is about like what's good and right here. You see, here's the important part. Sometimes what can happen is in the Christian world, we can kind of make anger all bad. Anger's like a light on your dashboard. It lets you know that there's something under the hood that needs to be examined, something that you value, something that's important to you. It feels threatened or it feels wrong. What would be really foolish is when the light on your dashboard comes up and you just keep driving and you ignore it. That would not be wise. So what you do with anger is you see it and you examine it. Just because the light on your dashboard comes on doesn't mean the car's evil. It's not evil. What you need to do with anger is you need to slow down and you need to think through, what is causing this emotion? Anger invites reflection before it invites action. And sometimes, like in the Christian world, we'll hear things like, my anger was righteous. And it's true, your anger at times could be righteous. But you know what's fascinating? Is the scriptures don't encourage us to pursue righteous anger. That's not really a theme in the scriptures. You know what the scriptures often warn us about? Be very careful with your anger. Be very careful with it. James puts it this way: everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. See, in the Christian world, sometimes what we do is, well, I'm just going to ignore my anger. No, that's not healthy. James is like saying, just be slow to become angry. Don't lose it so fast. Have a grip of this. And then I love what he says here, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. This is James's way of saying, hey, you should slow your anger down. Be thoughtful about this. God gets angry in Scripture. He does. But with his anger, it's about justice, it's about holiness, it's about protecting the vulnerable. Our anger, a lot of times, it's about tone, it's about disrespect, it's about emails, it's about someone's Facebook post. These are very different. Very different. Now, if you're anything like me, I grew up in a Christian home, and because of what I saw with my mom and dad, anger kind of became all bad. And so one of the challenges for me as I've been growing up is to learn the difference between these two words, nice and kind. If you have like what I have in this, where I lean towards like the softer end of the spectrum, it's easy for you to get these two words mixed up. They are not the same. Nice is when someone talks to you at Costco behind the line and they're being friendly towards you. You turn around and you be friendly back. Kind is different. Kind means you care enough about the person, the team, the organization, or the conversation to speak the kind truth in real time. Not 6 months later, not like after you've rehearsed it 100 times, but to speak the kind truth in real time, which is, in other words, saying that you speak the truth in love. So here's how, for some of us that struggle with this, the way you need to think about it is like TSA. TSA has a phrase: when you see something, you say something. By the way, TSA, they don't want you like calling them 2 weeks later and say, hey, saw a suspicious guy with a bag there, you might want to check it out. No, that doesn't help, right? Some of us who lean too far on the soft side, the phrase we need to develop is this: when you see something, when you feel something, when you think something, say something. For some of us, that alone would help us to have a little bit healthier relationships. Probably would even help in our work environments if we had this sort of sense of, hey, I need to say something. This might be hard for me, but I need to go for it. I need to share what I'm thinking. I've been holding back. I'm not sharing the full weight of my thoughts, and it's not helping right now. Now, it's possible that there's some of you here, you lean toward the 1 and 5s, and you're like, okay, enough. When are we going to go after the 6 to 10s? Okay, and way to go to assert yourself here. And I know the 6 and 10s, what you're thinking is, oh, I've been waiting for this. Yeah, because you like confrontation, so you're like, bring it. What do you got for me? Okay, if you lean towards the 6s and 10s, just wanted to tell you off the front, like, it's not bad that you have this in you. We need people like you, people who can lead, who can be strong, who aren't afraid of conflict. Actually, you probably know better than most of us that conflict actually can be very good and very healthy because it makes things clear, it gets everything on the table. In fact, oftentimes it can create intimacy, it brings clarity, it helps. And we need people like you because the world is challenging. We need people who aren't afraid of this stuff. And you're good because you can say the thing that a lot of times a lot of people are thinking, but are just too afraid to say. But let's also be honest. Sometimes you say the thing that everyone else wisely determines doesn't need to be said, and you say it anyway, all right? Now, if you lean kind of far over here on the hard side, the tough side, maybe like your home base is like an 8, but you have a hard time like going past like the 5s. If that describes you, the invitation that Jesus gives you, it's not that you would stop being strong, it's that you would bring your strength down to scale. Because for some of you, like there are people in your life that need to see this strength of yours come past the 5. There's nothing wrong with you like embracing your emotions or admitting that you need help. In fact, sometimes what can be like challenging for you is to realize that your strength could really be shown in you being flexible. Like in the middle of an argument, do you just constantly ramp up, or can you bring it down and really listen to what they're saying? Are you just like listening the whole time, waiting for one little pause so they can get your argument across? Or can you slow it down and go, they may not be delivering this perfectly, but I hear what they're saying in between the lines. I'm getting their heart right here. I now understand it. I'm getting it. Can you slow it down? Here's the part that might be really interesting. There might be people in your life, they don't feel the love, care, and concern from you until you bring your strength down past the 5. Because they feel missed by you. Because you're so busy being strong and leading that they need you to bring it down. In fact, there might be people in your life, their prayer request is that you would dial it down a little bit. They want to see this like other side of you. For others of you, the stretch is connection. You're really good at leading. You're really good at being up front. You're really good at being strong. But the stretch for you is to be seen. Like the real you being seen. Not like you have it all together, but like the not so put together part of you. And for some of us, we just avoid emotions because they're messy, they're inefficient, they can feel like they're out of control. And so what we do is we just blow right past them, or we stuff them, or we put them on the shelf. But here's the thing we see with Jesus. Jesus didn't just have strength of will, he had emotional strength. Like real emotional strength. In John chapter 11, Jesus arrives to Lazarus' house and he finds out that one of his closest friends is dead. And it says, the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. And a lot of us on the hard end of the scale, we're like, I've heard that verse before. Okay, Jesus had emotion. But until we slow down and think about this a little bit, we don't realize the implications of this. Do you think Jesus knew what he was going to do a few minutes later? Yeah. He knew he was going to bring Lazarus back from the dead. He knew it. And he still felt the emotion of that moment. He still grieved. He still felt it. He didn't do what a lot of us are tempted to do sometimes. I got to be strong right now. Don't let him see you cry. You got to show him real strength. Apparently, Jesus could lead and still get emotional. And I wonder how healing and special this moment was for Lazarus' family to see that Jesus got there late. And if he would have got there on time, maybe Lazarus wouldn't have died. And Jesus weeps. I wonder how powerful that was for Lazarus' family. Like, oh, okay, you're getting this. You're getting the emotion we're feeling. And there might be some of us that lean really far on the hard scale, and there might be people who need to see this from you. They might need to see some of this emotion come out. There's some of us here, and we haven't cried since like the Bush administration, all right? And you need to like let it out occasionally. It's okay for people to see you undone. You don't always have to be strong. You know what's fascinating is Jesus like didn't bypass emotion. He felt it. He felt that moment. For some of us, we skip grief, we go right into solutions, or we keep ourselves busy like solving problems. And Jesus, he didn't do it that way. Now, some of you 6 and 10s, you're like, okay, he cried, big deal. What else you got? Okay, here's the thing. Jesus asked for help. Oh, you 7, 8, 9s, and 10s, you don't like this thought. Jesus asked for help and he asked for support. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, all right? He knows what he's about to face. He knows he's going to experience the Roman flogging. He knows he's going to experience Roman crucifixion. He knows he's going to experience this moment where he's going to lose connection with the Father, and he's not in a good place. It's dark for Jesus. Listen to what he says here in Matthew 26. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. This is Jesus' way of saying, I'm in a bad place. Like the scriptures tell us, the anxiety of this moment is so intense for him, he begins to sweat blood. It's medically proven. You can sweat blood under so much stress and anxiousness. And this is what happens for Jesus. And not only that, but he says, stay here and keep watch with me. This is his way of saying, it's not good for me to be alone tonight. I'm going to need some support. He tells Peter, James, and John, I need you to be close while I go pray over there. He doesn't do, hey, I got this. Go to sleep. It's fine. No, he's like, I need people nearby. These two things that Jesus does here that for some of us, this is really hard. He names his feelings. He puts words to it. He vocalizes it. And he says, I need support. I can't do this. Some of us, we're great at being needed, but we're not so good at the needing. Here's what Jesus shows us, that asking for help isn't weakness, it is relational strength. Some of us on this harder part of the scale, you need to get good at this year saying, I need help. I'm not doing well. That scares me. I'm in a bad place. So for some of you, that could be the most spiritual thing you do this year, is to let people see the real you and get real about your emotions. So regardless of where you're on the scale, if you let Jesus have his way with you, he will change you. You look at the disciples, okay? You look at Matthew. I don't know this for sure. There's not scholarly work to this, but if I had to give Matthew a number or a range, I would guess that Matthew's range was probably on the softer end of the scale, okay? So Matthew is this guy who's a tax collector, probably works alone, probably has a desk job, probably doesn't have a lot of good friends. Everyone stares at him in public. He probably doesn't want to make eye contact. So Jesus calls Matthew to be part of the group. And Matthew goes, he leaves the job, leaves financial security, and walks into public scrutiny. Oh, he got ridiculed left and right for being a tax collector and now being part of Jesus' group. And so Jesus doesn't go, hey, you did enough. The fact that you're willing to come with me, the fact that you're willing to hang out with me and take on all this probably public scrutiny, that's enough. No. He gets challenged even more. In fact, Matthew holds a dinner party for the religious leaders and the sinners of the day. Matthew's stretch wasn't to be just nicer, it was to be bolder. This is bold hospitality. With Matthew's background, for him to invite all these people over, this would not have been easy. You look at Peter, right? Peter, it's probably safe to say, he's on the harder end of the scale. Peter's like one of those guys who just says it, right? He's bold. There's only two people we know who have walked on water, Jesus and, of course, Peter for a brief time, but it still counts, okay? Peter's the guy who, just says it, right? He doesn't think a lot, he just acts, right? The guys are coming to arrest Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Peter comes out with his sword, chops the guy's ear off, right? Just like he goes for it, right? For Peter, it wasn't about being bolder. It was about being vulnerable, showing restraint. You know what's fascinating? Peter got it. The reason why we all know about the bad moments with Peter, the reason why we know all the moments where Peter messed up is because Peter likely preached out of his weaknesses a lot. So the gospel writers, when they're writing the stories, they're like, yeah, we can put that one in there. Because he's used that story. He used it as an opener last week. We can put that one in there. Peter was very vulnerable. And then you look at John. All right, John was probably on the more hard, tough side, okay? Now, interesting, John, he's known as the disciple whom Jesus loved. He probably writes more about love than almost any other of the gospel writers. All right, he's talking about love a lot. But the early John, his nickname was the Son of Thunder. All right? They had this run-in with some Samaritans, and John's like, Jesus, should we call down fire and just wipe out these people? See, there's this changing with John. He goes from like Son of Thunder, which is like a WWF title, and then he goes to the disciple whom Jesus loves, and he writes about love all the time. You see, here's the thing. If you let Jesus have his way with you, he'll challenge you, and he'll change you. So let me give you some next steps I think will be helpful here. Here's the first one. I would encourage you to practice one small stretch. Try to do this. You don't have to totally revamp like your personality by Tuesday. You don't have to go from like Mr. Rogers to John Wick, okay, like right away. But try to like stretch yourself. So if you're on the softer end of the scale, my encouragement to you is that you would like challenge yourself to say, you know what? I'm gonna have the conversation. The one you've been putting off. The one you've been practicing in your head 100 times. The one you're always right on, but you've been putting it off. Have that conversation. For some of us, it's gonna mean, you know what? I gotta tell this person when they treat me that way, it hurts. And I haven't been honest with them. For others of us, the stretch for you is like slow it down when you get in an argument. Try to listen. Don't always try to win. Don't always try to be right. The other next step for some of us is to invite Jesus into the stretch. There's probably a reason why you have a certain range, why that range has been hard to break. And so maybe the most spiritual thing you could do is say, God, I can't do this. I've been operating a certain way, and I want to invite your son into this stretch for me. Maybe the most spiritual prayer you could do today is to say, Jesus, help me to have the courage to step into what is uncomfortable for me. And he will lovingly come alongside you and help you with that. The same Jesus who stretched his arms on the cross is still stretching hearts today. And he's not doing it in a way to make you feel bad or shameful. He's doing the way that you would experience life and life abundantly and to the full. Heavenly Father, we come before you grateful for the reminder of your Son, that he models for us what true humanity looks like when it is fully surrendered and aligned to you. And so, God, we want to be honest. We know there's parts of what we see with Jesus that is hard for us. So help us to do this in a way that honors you, but is also honest with ourselves, that there's probably parts of how Jesus lived, there's parts of how he showed us how to live that are going to be hard for us. We're grateful that you love us in spite of the fact that we don't have it all together. May you do that good work in us, the work that reflects your Son. We pray this in the good and awesome name of Jesus. And everybody said,